English Forward presents.
That's excellent.
All right. Great.
Okay, Asha, I'm really excited to be talking to you today. I'd just like to introduce you to our audience. Today, we're going to be chatting to Ashai Abhyankar. He's an attorney. He's an IAS officer in the Indian Administrative Services. And I just want to welcome you to the English Forward podcast.
Thank you so much. Great talking to you, Mitch.
Yeah, it's great having you here. Ashai, can you tell us a bit about where you're from and where you're based in the world?
Yeah, so I'm based out of a place called Pune in India. That's very close to our commercial capital of Mumbai.
Yes.
And I was working with the government for about a time of about 4.5 years with India's stock market regulator, dealing with investigations and vigilance.
Okay.
So I had a good experience of dealing with stock market frauds, but my first love was always teaching. And that kind of brought me back to my home run institute in Pune, wherein we coach civil servant aspirants, people who want to enter the Indian civil services and make a difference to the country.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that's a great vocation. I see you've got a legal background with a master's in law from Pune.
That's absolutely right. I am a lawyer and I love the securities markets. That's what got me my job with SEBI, which is India's stock market regulator. And thereafter, my interest in research is now pushing me towards perhaps getting my PhD into order in the next few years. So yeah, that's the basic plan as far as I'm concerned.
And what are you doing your thesis on?
My thesis are going to be on public policy, on how you can use a higher degree of automation, particularly in decentralized mechanisms of governance. So India is moving towards a huge IT revolution, particularly with regard to service-based last mile delivery. And okay. I think that works very, very well in transitional economies like India, wherein you see you're not being able to really reach out to the teeming millions. So IT-enabled services, information technology devices, the huge revolution with AI and other things, I think that is the future for governance in this country, for agriculture, and so many other issues that we are facing in India today.
Yeah, it's a fascinating field to be involved in.
Yes. And most of the developed world has outsourced service delivery mechanisms to the private sector, for example, the United States for one. But India is still having a huge government initiative with regard to service delivery. So that is a huge challenge for a country wherein we're looking at a 1.8 billion population in the future.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Ashai, you've got some great accolades. I know you were among 80 students chosen worldwide for the master's program offered at the Ball School of Law at the University of Berkeley in California. That's
right.
And then you decided to actually just come and work with the Securities and Exchange Board in India. Mm-hmm. What was it that made that decision clear and easy for you to make?
That was too good an offer to refuse. In fact, I remember that I was torn between the offers at Berkeley and also to work with the Securities and Exchange Board of India. But I knew that I could always return back to Berkeley sometime in my life, which I definitely plan on doing. But the job at the stock market regulator wouldn't really wait back for me. So that was a very easy choice. Also, the stock markets in India at that point of time, subsequently to the 1998 Asian financial crisis, were seeing huge regulatory upheavals. And most of India's stock market laws, their structure, their mechanisms, all come from the Securities Exchange Commission of the United States. So in that sense, we are at a very nascent level of development. So I believe that if I could contribute to the stock market growth in India, understand the mechanisms from the regulatory and legal side, it would add a lot to my profile as well. And that made the decision a whole lot more easier.
Yeah, it makes 100% sense. I know you were also recently admitted to the Moral Leadership Program at the Kennedy School of Harvard this summer.
That's right.
Congratulations. That's a real accolade.
Thank you so much, Mitch. I look forward to it. Kennedy School has always been on my bucket list to tick off. So hopefully I'll be able to do it this summer.
That sounds fantastic. I'd like to maybe just talk a little bit about your work as, at the IAS Academy with your father, Ajit, and
Right.
what you do there. Because I think, with the way India is going, it's very important for the audience to understand the potential and possibilities of actually getting involved in the service and what the criteria are. So if you could maybe just talk a bit about what you do and your role in teaching and mentoring is, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. So I teach three papers. I teach a paper on ethics, I teach a paper on public policy, and I teach a paper on government. The civil services examination in India is not so much a theoretical or paper-based exam. It's more analytical. It's extremely dynamic, and it doesn't really test speed or other issues like most other competitive exams. So if you're, for example, taking a GRE or a TOEFL or a GMAT, it's always a number crunching game because you're up against X number of questions in Y number of minutes. But this exam is very different. It tests qualities which are more ones that are building government officers. So they're looking at qualities of precision, clarity, comprehension, a very, very, nimble mind that's able to pick up finer nuances of issues. So it's a very huge challenge as a tutor to be actually designing programs that can be dynamic, that can basically bring in large number of people, because there are close to about 900,000 people who apply for this exam every year.
Wow, that's
And
a lot.
that's a lot of people, and the Indian government selects only 1,000 out of this 900,000.
Sure, that's quite a strict criteria.
So it's a huge sifting process that goes on because you're trying to get the best to run the country, and in a situation like that, you're basically up against finding those people who really have it in them, honing their skills, and seeing them through. So it keeps you on your toes every year in terms of trying to see how you can create common platforms, because India is a 5,000-year-old civilization, and we have huge diversity with regard to our history, our geography, our culture. So you need to bring all these people together. You need to devise a common platform where your communication and creativity skills are going to be understood by all those concerned, and then basically just fire away.
Yeah, well, I see you come from a family that's obviously been through that process. There are 9 members of your family that are either in the IAS or the Indian Foreign Service. Can you tell
absolutely
us?
Right.
Yeah. Is it always been an interest in the family? Is it a long history of people, or is it quite a recent thing that the family's been involved in?
So my brother happens to be the 4th generation in the civil services from the family.
Gee, that's a legacy, huh?
Yes, it's quite a legacy. My great-grandfather was the political advisor to Mahatma Gandhi at the Second Roundtable Conference in London. So we really go back a long way with assisting government and working for them. So yeah.
So you've seen, growing up in a family like that, firsthand the process of being exposed to the working lifestyle of being in the IAS. And
that's right. Yeah.
Has being involved in civil service always been of interest to you?
Teaching was always my passion. Even when I was in law school, I always thought that I could communicate well with people. I could, and I always had a deep love towards teaching. Actually, my great-grandfather helped set up one of India's finest law schools, known as the Indian Law School in Pune. And he used to come, and though he was a very, very eminent lawyer, he used to come and teach constitutional history. So I think it's the nurture and the nature that makes this combination of me wanting to teach.
Yeah.
Right. So it's my genes and my environment both. But yes. So the teaching has always been of prime importance to me. But when I was wanting to explore this as something that I would want to do all throughout my life, I wanted to teach kids or students and do things which were more dynamic in nature. So the IAS course and the teaching the UPSC platform seem to be the best available option, because things are changing every day. You keep discussing newer things, whether it's foreign policy, it's public policy, government issues, ethical dimensions. Like you recently have the Johnson & Johnson hip replacement issues that have been cropping up in India, particularly with faulty implants and other things. So there's always new things to discuss, newer case studies coming up. So dynamic issues interest me more, and if I can teach them and discuss it with students, I think that's a beautiful kind of situation.
Yeah, I think it really is a dynamic field and certainly not static. As the world moves and evolves with technology and all the things around that, it certainly will be an interesting field to be a part of.
Absolutely. Another thing that I'd like to talk about, Mitch, is so the year before last, we wanted to get into the space of looking at school children as well. So the academy decided to put out another foundation, which was known as the Action for Joint Intellectual Transformation.
Okay.
So it was named after my late father, Ajit, and that's what it was called. It was called as the Action for Joint Intellectual Transformation. And the entire focus of this program was basically focusing on K to 12, so kindergarten to class 12 in India, trying to build creativity and syncing it with information technology.
Okay.
So that was so we are running a lot of creative writing programs in schools in India. We are also running programs which are connected to artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing. So there's a whole gamut of activities that's happening in schools. There are people who couldn't. There are people who couldn't actually even have access to a computer or had never seen a 3D printer before. So that system worked out really well, and we are having a beautiful response. We have children who are able to have creative storytelling done through exercises of abstract painting. They're able to interpret climate change through stories. So there's some fabulous stuff happening where we're just trying to create a revolution in education here.
Yeah, I think it's so important. And is this all part of creating a longer runway for people that might ultimately be interested in joining the IAS service?
Most certainly, and more interestingly, you see, my own perspectives as far as the education space are concerned is that every man doesn't need to have a degree-based education, right?
Yeah.
So if you're able to build entrepreneurship in children, they are able to scope out a whole lot more of options apart from moving towards a degree or job-based education. So a lot of government programs in India today, like the startup initiative, the entrepreneurship programs, the national innovation missions, are essentially focusing on entrepreneurship-led growth. And you see, India by 2030 is going to have almost 50% of its population below the age of 25 years. So we are sitting on some fabulous demographics. So if we can really tap this potential, every man will be a leader if he's an entrepreneur. So that's the whole focus.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely crucial in being able to access a larger database of people collectively and get input from them. Certainly creates a far more balanced and objective outcome. And the creativity in it is unbelievable because now you have a pool of people that can contribute. I mean, some of the best ideas that I've got are from my children, and they come out with things that are fantastic. And so that's a great idea that you guys are working on there.
Yeah, so you see, because the thing is, in developing countries, about 30, 40 years ago, one of the major points of focus was that the government is going to do everything for you, right? So it was more of a dependence-based approach. But now as India looks at competing with global, the so-called global leaders like China and many other countries, we are moving more towards a reliance-based approach rather than, you see, a dependence-based approach. So if that can percolate into the education system and into the mind spaces of young creative minds, I think we have a wonderful situation in the next decade or two, So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Also, it's quite interesting, like in a country like India, with the government taking a real interest in actually making policy decisions that include the population, and more of a focus on the government than the private sector is wonderful.
Absolutely.
if there were young kids, like not even young kids, I mean students and things that are aspiring to do something worthwhile with their lives, and
Right.
what is the potential of doing something in the IIS as a career choice?
You see, the very myopic understanding of most people is that as a country develops, you see, you have a lesser government interference. But actually in India, with the expansion that we're having and with the public-private partnerships, with government partnering in a whole lot of spaces, the role of civil servants in India is expanding hugely. So earlier you had in the 1950s to the 1990s, a civil servant was more of a doer. Post the globalization era and the entire liberalization, privatization, globalization context, he became a facilitator. And post the new millennium, you have him as a regulator as well. So today you have him as a jack of all trades and a master of many. So you have him as a doer, as a facilitator, as a regulator, as a strategist. So it's a super kind of situation because you see a diverse experience within say a job cycle of about 30-35 years. It's perhaps impossible to ever get in the private sector.
Yeah, I know you're right. There'd be so many different options to explore, and really exciting when you're in a country that's so forward thinking. And I think also for someone that wants to contribute to society, they have an opportunity to have a big impact in the place they live on a very large number of people, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. You see, a human resource is actually an asset rather than a liability, provided it's going to be very productive. So I think the 21st century India needs to just focus on human resource development to its optimum potential, and then we're going to be a global superpower.
I have no doubt. When somebody does pass their exams in the IIS, is the government then their employer, or would it be a state like Goa or that type of thing?
Yeah, so basically when the pool of about 900,000 people are selected every year, they are allocated different states in the Indian Union with the option of serving in the central government, on foreign assignments, in a multitude of foreign agencies like the United Nations, the WHO, and so many other institutions, or in embassies abroad. So yes, though you're assigned to a state, it's pretty fluidic for you to move around within the Indian Union, to serve at the central government, and also to sign up for foreign assignments. So you really, it's your career looks like a salad bowl, so.
And if there were parents that were listening to this that had kids in school still, that thought that, they obviously maybe been to one of your talks, they had heard that there was an interest in the kid, or the kid sort of got that sort of a bent. What are the criteria that a child would need, or a young person would need? What sort of proficiency would they need in language, technology, whatever it might be, to actually be accepted into the program?
Absolutely. You see, a lot of parenting today is a very difficult task, particularly because parents believe that technology and its devices can actually outsource parenting, which to my mind is not the right approach at all.
Yeah, I agree.
So creating an environment for children wherein they are in touch with nature, where they can explore their creativity, a lot of focus on reading and writing skills from as early as they can write and read, allowing them to develop their own opinions on issues that affect their immediate environment, feeding their mind with good creative thoughts, exposing them to form their own opinions rather than thrusting it on them. So there was a very famous English song that said, "Leave the kids alone." So I think that's exactly what needs to be done. You need to leave them alone. So you just need to leave them alone. You need to allow them to be in touch with their own roots, develop their own wings and fly the nest. So I think that kind of parents in India are controlling. The social system is like that, right? It breeds control. So that's something that you need to get out of that mindset. You need to allow them the freedom and the creativity to explore their own life. Feed them with good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, and you will have the child absolutely excel in life.
You're 100% right. Just providing that environment for them is so crucial.
And you can't outsource parenting, so it cannot be done to devices. It cannot be done to technology. These are critical aids in today's day and age. So you need to use them, but it can't work on an outsourced kind of a model entirely. So the hand holding that is required in formative years, you see, facilitating learning mechanisms apart from technology are extremely crucial. So I think to all the parents who are listening, this is something that they should really bear in mind. A simple habit, however, economically not well-to-do a family is a very simple habit is just reading a newspaper every day. Right? It allows you to know what's immediately happening in your environment, what's happening in your nation, what are the international issues like. So the child can form his own opinions. He becomes well-informed. And you see, if the child is well-informed, like you were mentioning to me sometime in our talk today, that you learn so much from your own kids. You know, they come up with ideas that you really don't know or you haven't really heard about. So if the child is smart and he's well-informed, he's going to spread that smartness all around him as well. So, you know,
that is crucial. I think, you know, the way a kid spells love is Time. And they just want time. And if you've got, as a parent, time to spend nurturing, like you mentioned with reading a newspaper, if that can be special time, that you're creating a relationship and a bond, and the child is learning and expanding their mind, it does a lot for the family unit. It does a lot for the child's, you know, feeling of self-worth, their confidence, their place in the world. And that's all important for creating and building a student that becomes a useful member of society and can contribute.
Absolutely, Mitch. I completely agree. You see, when I was growing up, we had a rule in the house that we had to sit as a family and have one meal together. And,
it sounds like our family. We're exactly the same. It's wonderful.
You see, and those lunch or dinner time conversations were not about television shows or serials, but they were more on what we did in the day and what was our experience and things that we did in school or college, what we learned. So it was an open forum, and this created a very strong family bond. And it also made us really very well informed to things that were happening. So I think simple things like that can actually fix major issues.
You're absolutely right. It sounds like you come from a very close family, Aisha.
Yeah, so we're pretty Jewish like that. Indians are like that. So they're just excessively integrated, but we're fine.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I believe in that. You know, we're exactly the same. We have a very, very close family bond. We spend very deliberate time every day around a table, eating, chatting, and developing. And you can actually see it coming through the confidence of the kids, their integration into society. So, which is great. I want to just chat to you a little bit about Goa. It's a very progressive, diverse state with a very high literacy rate.
Absolutely.
Is that deliberate? I mean, is it something? How would it compare to other states? And is it something you set up before?
India has a lot of states. The southern states in India generally reflect a very high degree of literacy. So in Kerala, which is down south, we have a literacy of close to 100%.
Okay.
Right. Goa has been special because of 400 years of Portuguese rule.
Yes.
So the kind of culture, the kind of lifestyle, the food habits that you have in Goa, they have a good blend with what we find in India, but they still stand out with their own distinctive taste. And Goa, essentially, when the Portuguese came in, they were able to bring in some fabulous things into the Goan society, which are reflected in the language, in the day-to-day living habits. So the society is very egalitarian. You have a population that is diverse with Hindus and Christians, all living in a beautiful harmony with each other. And the state intervention in Goa in education is fabulous, whether it be primary schools, secondary schools, colleges. So even in a small state like Goa, you have government-run medical schools, government-run engineering schools. About 96-97% of the schools in Goa are state-run. So it's a fabulous state to be in.
And with such a high literacy rate, do you find a lot of kids opting for civil service? Was it more entrepreneurial type outcomes?
Unfortunately, not in Goa, because the literacy has also come. There's a very old phrase in Goa called "sossegado," which in Portuguese means to be very relaxed. So the Goans in their mind are slightly a little too relaxed for the most part of India. So there is a lot of potential here. They are excessively intelligent, but you see the natural landscape of Goa provides you with enough to take care of your life. So they are not necessarily driven for work. And that's primarily what our focus in Goa is to create awareness about the civil services, to move beyond traditional jobs or work profiles that focus on tourism or probably migration into Europe. So we're trying to bring back people to focus on government and other issues. So I think that kind of a model should perhaps work well.
And tell me, it was once said that if a person can't find your product or your idea, it doesn't exist. How do you now obviously with Goa, you've got a very high literacy rate, you've got incredible potential in a population, and
Right.
what you want is to get some of that intellectual capital infused back into civil service, because it'll have a huge impact on India as a whole, on the state, etc. How do you get those ideas and communicate that being in civil service is a wonderful vocation across to parents and then obviously to young people and to students as they start planning their lives?
So that's essentially what our Center for Intellectual Transformation is planning to do. We're planning to make inroads into schools, interact more with students, with teachers, with tutors, with guys who are running schools, with parents. So our outreach program mainly focuses at school level itself, so that parents don't take decisions for children, don't push them into career options or even academic streams that they don't have interest to. Because in India, most of the mindset moves towards engineering and medical schools, even if the aptitude and the competence of the child is missing. But there are social compulsions that would push people towards these tried and tested career options. And that's essentially the mind space that we're trying to invade into as far as parents are concerned first. Because if the parent can think differently and allows the child to be a risk taker, he's definitely going to be able to do something different and inspire a whole lot of people around him.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And do you have work experience opportunities for young people to come and see what it's like to be part of civil service?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So there are a whole lot of interactions that are arranged with people who have gotten through from our institute, from serving civil servants. They come and share their experiences. They definitely try to shine on to young minds, try to impress upon them the need to do something different. So yeah, that's a part of the entire outreach program as well.
Because, we obviously, with what we're thinking about with blockchain and how employers can get a better outcome. Because sometimes, kids go to school and they learn something and they come out and then they can't find a job because it's not applicable to what the marketplace needs. So they might be fulfilling a degree or doing something that their parents want, but it's not relevant to today's times, or what they've learned has changed. And I think, creating that relationship between, government, and it's almost like a partnership where the government is saying, man, we've got beautiful, bright minds. How do we engage them, bring them into civil service and help them actually grow in their career, education, etc.? Is that something that's...
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Are there any initiatives?
You see, so
you carry on, Asha.
Yeah, so Mitch, that's something that they're definitely doing in. Yeah, so that's something that they're definitely trying to focus on, and the government is building a lot of partnerships with private sector. So, for example, our entire passport services in this country is run by teams of private service providers in terms of picking up information, of holding it at the back end, of being a facilitator with regard to issue of passports. So young minds have a huge scope to work with government, not only through an entry into civil services, but also to provide ancillary support with initiatives and partnerships. So that is one aspect. Coming to your question as well about newer technologies and interfaces. So we have states like Andhra Pradesh and Telangana that are having civil servants use blockchain, particularly with regard to digitization of land records, which is a huge task in this country, given the major agrarian backbone that we have. So we have these technologies that are being used by civil servants. There are civil servants who've been engineers, who've been doctors, those who've worked in public policy before. So they're able to get newer technologies, they're able to implement them in government, and they're able to revolutionize the entire system of government functioning.
Yeah, it's actually good to know about the ancillary services because I think often people have common misconceptions about what careers in civil service will be. And it's obviously the lack of the education and knowledge about those particular careers that keep people away, because things that are publicized a lot more are education, medicine, like engineering, medicine, law. They're more sort of sought after careers from an academic point of view, because I think they're more visible. Would you say that's true in India?
It's very true in India, because you see, the first thing that a person wants to do with a career is he wants to get a job, right? Now with the civil services, with the numbers that we just spoke about earlier, with the 900,000 applying and 1,000 getting through, a lot of people have doubts about whether they're going to be able to do it right. So they move into careers wherein they can get their paycheck, which is secured for them every month. But what they miss out on is the larger picture. You always miss out on the wood for the trees. So it's like that. So they take decisions which basically compromise their own skill set, their own expertise, things in which they can be hugely beneficial to the country, to the government, but perhaps choose jobs with regard to security over creativity and things like that. So those mind spaces definitely need to change in this country.
Yeah, I think, but when we chat about like obviously the percentage is very small, 1,000 people getting chosen from 900,000. But if you had to add into that the ancillary services that could feed into that, I mean, all of a sudden that number changes completely.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And today the government is looking out for private players, for citizens. You see, when India got independent, which almost 70 years ago, our focus was more on representative democracy. People were interested in casting their adult franchise once in 5 years and electing a government. But today in the new millennium, we have an entire focus on participative democracy. So the government wants you to participate in governance. It wants you to bring your ideas through. It wants you to partner with the government. So you have direct access to multiple government platforms. The Prime Minister's office runs an open portal wherein a person can bounce his ideas off on the portal, can discuss it. Those ideas are incentivized with prizes that can be won. Your ideas are published on that platform. So there's a direct approach today for governance in India. The only thing that people need to do is they need to act on it. That's about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll just, one of the things that you said that you'd like to discuss was how you synergize creativity and technology to build language. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you see, nowadays, when you see children, you see them having an excess of use of technology. So whether it's reading a book as well, a traditional book disappears and you have platforms like Kindle. But what you're not being able to do is, if you can take that technology and you're able to have a child. See, I have always believed that the heart of language is imagery.
Yeah.
So if you're able to write, and for the reader, I'm able to create an imagery of that, I'm a successful writer. So whether it's prose, whether it's poetry, whatever style or form of writing, the idea is to create a very rich and vivid imagery. So that's essentially what we are focusing on doing with our creative writing programs. We're trying to have children build imageries in their minds that essentially break stereotypes, that break standard formats of storytelling. And technological devices actually allow them the range and scope of exhibiting their skills, their writing skills, their creative skills, particularly with publishing blogs, with publishing apps. So the creative mind space works well, and technology allows for dissemination.
Yeah, it makes sense. Look, from my side, with what we're doing with English, if there's ever any synergy or anything I can work on that can contribute and help, I'm very willing to put some effort into that.
Absolutely, Mitch. We really look forward to it.
Yeah. I just wanted to talk a little bit about technology and what areas you see as a focus with your work going forward and Goa and what have you. Are you looking at things like blockchain very actively?
Absolutely, Mitch. As of now, the point of focus is to create the necessary awareness, right? So a child should be able to look at what AR and VR devices look like, what a 3D printer looks like. So once the initiation is done, allowing a child to see the full spectrum of what technology and its development looks like in the future, he's able to have a more sharper focus to certain skill sets that he could develop, certain platforms that he thinks he could perhaps explore and take forward. So that's essentially what we are planning to do at school level today, and then perhaps take it further from there.
Yeah, I think, what I think about a lot with all the new technologies and what have you. Obviously, it's much easier for younger people because they're more accepting, but it's that interface between the technology and the actual user that if it's simple and intuitive, it's very easy for people to adopt and to actually grow with it and do stuff with it. So I think the simpler we keep it, actually, the better.
Absolutely. And particularly in a country like India, simplicity is required because you have to have a larger outreach to the 1.45 billion people that we have today. So unless it's simple and it's user friendly, we're really not going to be able to penetrate into a larger audience.
Yeah, Asha, you've got incredible energy. I mean, I can just sense that. You've got vision, you've got focus, you want to be part of a better future. You like to break old rules and define new boundaries. What actually motivates you?
I think it's just getting up every morning and doing what needs to be done and trying to do it right. So my father used to always explain excellence to me in a very nice way. He used to tell me that excellence is getting it right every time. So I think that's what we're trying to focus on. So it's an aspirational kind of thing. You get up every morning and you try to fix something, you break newer barriers, and then you recreate new ones. So I think life can be summarized as a process of learning and unlearning. So as you keep learning something new, you unlearn something that you don't want. And I think that's a cyclic process. So that basically just keeps you going every day.
Yeah, we keep on learning, don't we? We're actually always students in whatever area we're in. Do you have a daily ritual or a habit or belief that you feel is integral to your success in what you're doing?
So absolutely. I think the only thing that you need to do is you need to do good, and I think the good comes back to you. So if you're able to spread good to as many people as you can, and your good becomes your better and your better becomes your best, I think that's the mantra to success, is spreading goodness as much as you can, and it comes back from the most unexpected quarters back to you. So I think, yeah, that's what keeps me going.
If you had to think about the area that you're involved in with students and obviously communication, we've got lots of different technologies, blockchain, there's edtech, AI, etc., right at the forefront of the way students communicate and will interact, both in their state, in the country, globally. If you could think of something that you could develop that would help that process or speed it up, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so we are trying to work on platforms, particularly with locally within the country. So there are a large chunk of rural schools, there are underprivileged children who are trying to have access to this technology. So one active project that we have been contemplating on, and also looking out for like-minded, corporations, organizations, etc., to come and help finance and help us run it, is perhaps setting up a system whereby we can drive a complete, say, a technology bus into rural areas in India, have street children, slum children, children from underprivileged and less fortunate homes actually have access to technology, and those that don't have access to education but perhaps can get themselves technology driven, build platforms, and then you see carry on those success stories to other states in India. So yeah, that's an active plan. That's the first thing that we want to get started on. And the second thing obviously is to have education, information dissemination that happens to as many places and as many schools and educational institutions as possible, using technologies like blockchain and things like that. So yeah, that's something that we've started working on very actively, and hopefully end of 2019, early 2020 should see some results on that.
I think you're right. A lot of times we focus on the more sort of affluent parts of society, and there's a wealth of knowledge and brain power, etc., that is sitting, an opportunity, and it's certainly something that I think about a lot, and how we can level the playing fields for people that are less fortunate.
Absolutely. So one of the girls who we are mentoring here in Goa is a national level kabaddi player. Kabaddi is a local sport that's played in the Indian subcontinent.
Okay.
So she's a national level player, and her family lives on an income which is less than $5 a day, with her father being the only earning member. So these are the underdogs who have to be energized, who have to be supervised, and those are the success stories that we want to write here in India.
And do you tell those stories? Is that a part of the way that you actually spread the word and get people onto, thinking about the cause?
Absolutely. That's how we get a lot of like-minded individuals, philanthropic organizations that actually provide the necessary economic support to students like that. And we are trying to give them a better life. Ultimately, man is the maker of his own destiny, but if he can get the right inputs at the right time, I think it changes the way in which his life looks. So.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And we're back to mentorship again, because, you don't know what you don't know. And if you can show a child, a young person, that there is a brighter future and you can engage them, they can aspire to that. And if they aspire to that with the right roadmap, they can actually achieve wonderful things in their lives.
Absolutely. And the right interventions at the right time help, because there's a domino effect. When you are able to lift one person out of a not so conducive environment, that person is definitely going to carry that good and transfer it to another person when he's well equipped to handle his own life, and it becomes like a chain reaction. That's a blockchain again. So it's like a human blockchain. So we're trying to spread that good, and that's how the community development happens in a country like this.
Yeah, that's right. And, those people become the advocates going forward, and they lean down and grab the hands of people and help them. And then, as you say, you get that domino effect, which helps elevate society and give people a better life, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So that's actually the motivation that moves us every day, is just to push towards that effect, to bring in more people, and to just spread the goodness.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Shay, do you have any final thoughts or words that maybe an idea that I haven't covered that you'd like to bring up at this time?
Nothing much, Mitch. Like we spoke about earlier, is I think to feed children with as much creativity, independent thinking, and independent decision making as possible, so that aids their communication skills. It makes them better individuals. It allows them to explore ideas that would otherwise be termed as churlish or foolish. So I think just allowing them that space to grow and feeding them with right inputs So I always tell parents, I said, I think these perhaps seem to be very apt final words for us to kind of conclude, is that don't row the boat, you just steer it.
Yeah, that's a very, very apt words. Yeah, that
Right.
guidance is so important.
So all that you need to do is you just need to steer the boat. But if you are going to row it, you're going to rock it. So that's not something that you need to do at all.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Well, I must say, just to wish you all the best. You certainly have got a vision, and I'm going to follow you and see how that develops. But just wanted to say thank you again for your time. I appreciate you taking some time to chat to us, and it has really been good chatting to you, Asha. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Mitch. I think your platform is going to do justice to all these ideas. It's been wonderful talking to you, and hope to connect again.
We definitely will. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
You were listening to an English Forward production, the web's largest Learn English community and Q&A site. Everything you need to understand and improve your English. Visit EnglishForward.com.